In this video, I'll be talking about the Brooke Owens Fellowship program. So what the program is, what is the eligibility for applying to this fellowship, as well as what the entire application process looks like. I'll also be talking about who Brooke Owens is. The entire fellowship program was built in her memory and remembrance. I'll also be sharing my personal experience of applying to the fellowship program twice. I was a finalist for the class of 2021, so I'll be talking a little bit about my learning and experiences. And finally, the most important of all, we'll be talking to Grace Graham, who was a class of 2019 Brooke Owens Fellow, and she'll be sharing her experience and journey through the application and even the internship that she received through the program. She'll also be talking about how the fellowship gave her a launch pad for her career and giving you some amazing advice if you aspire to apply to this fellowship. So if you're interested in any of that, please watch this video. Before we begin, if you learned something from this video, give it a big thumbs up. Comment down below if you have some other question and I'll try my level best to answer them. Also, there's a chance that someone who's a Brooke Owens Fellow is watching this video, so if you are, it would be amazing if you could share some of your personal insights in the comment section. And also, if you enjoy space related videos, please subscribe to the channel. So let's get started. The Brooke Owens Fellowship program is a fellowship and internship program that was created to honor the memory of space pioneer and pilot Brooke Owens. It was developed with the aim of supporting extraordinary women and gender minorities who aspire to work in the space industry in the future. The fellowship provides internships at some of the best aerospace companies in the United States. It gives you mentors who are already working in the industry, as well as an amazing network of fellows. Applicants from all nationalities, ethnicities, socio-economic backgrounds and ages can apply to this program. The best part is that it is open for all majors, so you don't necessarily have to be a STEM student to apply. Past fellows have majored in law, multimedia and even theatre. What the fellowship committee is looking for is a change maker. The students that they've selected in the past have founded clubs, won competitions, published their research and even started charitable organizations. The fellowship works in 3 phases. The first phase is the application phase. Here you have to submit your college transcripts, letter of recommendations and essays. The topic of the essays generally cover the candidate's personal interests as well as their technical interests. The list of the host companies is available on the fellowship's website, and the candidate also has to give preference as to which 3 companies they'd like to work with for the summer. So if you complete all of that, your application process for the first phase is done. The next phase is the semi-final round. The biggest cut that the fellowship makes of the applicants is from the first phase to the semi-final round. If you get qualified for the semi-final round, you have to prepare for the telephone interview. One of the executives from the fellowship committee will call you to conduct your telephone interview. Here, they first confirm your host company preferences and then conduct a general telephone interview to see whether you're a good fit for their fellowship program. If you qualify the semi-finals round, you then go into the finals round. For the finals round, the fellowship committee matches you to anywhere between 1 to 4 host companies. And your contact information along with your entire application package of essays and transcripts and LORs are all sent to those host companies. For the final round, it is up to the host companies to contact you and conduct interviews. Now, it varies from host to host, but some like to conduct telephone interviews, some conduct Skype interviews, and a lot even might ask for your work samples. There is also a possibility that the host companies might not contact you at all because you might not be the right fit for their company. With the final shortlist, the class of that particular year of Brooke Owens Fellow is announced. Generally, around 35 to 40 students are selected for every year's class of the Brooke Owens Fellowship program. These fellows are linked with the host company for a 12-week paid internship in that particular summer. They are also connected with 2 senior mentors. These include CEOs of aerospace companies and even real-life astronauts. Here, I'd like to add a special segment to talk about Brooke Owens and how her life and legacy inspired this fellowship program. Professionally, Brooke had worked with NASA, the FAA, X Prize, and even the White House. Brooke was also an accomplished pilot and spent a lot of her happiest moments flying. She was the sort of person for whom no amount of time on Earth would have been enough to do all that she wanted to do. She was also the sort of person who lived life to its fullest and found joy in every moment. The Brooke Owens Fellowship program was created to carry on her legacy. Like Brooke, the program was designed to be unique and purpose-driven. It was fueled by passion and Brooke's legacy. In this segment, I'll be talking a little bit about my personal experience applying for the Brooke Owens Fellowship program. I applied for the Brooke Owens Fellowship program twice. The first when I was in my second year and the second time when I was in my third year of my undergrad. My first time applying, I kind of found out about the fellowship pretty early, but I procrastinated my way towards the deadline, as a result of which my essays weren't the best they could be, my letter of recommendations were rushed, and kind of in my head I knew that my chances of getting in were pretty low. The first time applying, I didn't even qualify for the semi-finals round. The second time when I applied, I really tried putting my heart and soul into the application and showing the fellowship committee who I am as a person. There were a lot of people I talked to during the application process. This included people who'd won the fellowship and people who'd applied to the fellowship as well. They all told me that the committee was looking for a change maker and someone who always strived to be the best version of themselves. And that is kind of what I tried to show the committee through my essays, transcripts, and my letters of recommendation. As a result of this, I made it to the semi-finals round where 120 out of 700 applicants were selected. Here I had my telephone interview with one of the fellowship committee members. So I'd already confirmed all of my host institution preferences. Also, another quick tip for anybody who's an international and applying to this fellowship program. When I say international, I mean you're not a citizen or a permanent resident of the United States. Unfortunately, because of ITAR, a lot of host companies cannot accept you as their summer intern. As a result of which, when you're choosing your host preferences, you have to look for companies that are internationally friendly and apply to those in particular. Anyways, I was notified that I was a finalist for the class of that year, which means I was in the top 80 candidates that were going to try and become fellows for the class of 2021. I was matched with 3 host companies, Planet Labs, Joby Aviation, and Loft Orbitals. Unfortunately, only one of the host companies actually contacted me and conducted a preliminary interview, and even there I wasn't selected to be a fellow in this year's class. Overall, the experience for me was absolutely great. It helped me learn so much about the interview process as well as the application process. So from a future point of view, if you're planning to go to grad school, the application and the essays, LORs will give you a great experience of what that process is like. If you're planning to get a job in the industry as soon as you're done with undergrad, then the interview process will also be really helpful to understand what your strengths and weaknesses are. So if you're planning to apply, definitely apply to this fellowship program. So now I saved the best for the last, of course. Now we'll be talking to Grace Graham, who was a class of 2019 Brooke Owens Fellow. Here's the interview. Hi Grace, thank you so much for doing this with us. If you could just introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, I'm Grace Graham. I am currently a senior at Utah State University. I was a Brooke Owens Fellow in the class of 2019, and I really love all things space. I really like engineering. I'm doing mechanical engineering with an emphasis in aerospace, but I'm also getting a dual major in economics because I love the business behind commercial space and I want to keep pushing commercial space forward. So
that's great. And especially, oh yeah, I forgot to mention this in the intro. You were working for a business with your dad, right? Something to do with meals, I think.
Yeah. When I was like 16 or 17, my dad and I started, coming up with this idea for a freeze-dried food company. But instead of just packaged, one kind of food, freeze-dried food, it was a meal. So you'd put in a cup of boiling hot water, and 12 minutes later, you have a really, really balanced, nutritious meal that's really low in calories, but keeps you fed.
Oh, wow,
so that's been going really well.
Nice. Okay, so we'll just jump right into the interview. I have some questions that I'm going to ask you now about your experience with the fellowship. So first of all, I think we'd all like to know how you found out about the Brooke Owens Fellowship program.
I actually found out about the fellowship through a mentor of mine. I had met him when I was a freshman in college and he was a senior in college, and he kind of mentored me through a lot of the initial, what even the terminology was in the space industry. And so that was a really good head start for me. But then he went to grad school, and someone in his class, it was actually, I think it was Julia D, who was a 2018 Brookie. She sent out a message to her group chats in her classes and was saying, hey, there's this fellowship. It's a the Brooke Owens Fellowship. It's for these kind of people, gender minorities. And if you have any questions, I would love for you to apply and I would love to help. And he thought of me and said, I think that you really fit what these people are looking for. You should apply. And that was terrifying for me because that was at Stanford where people were getting that message. And so me being at a little state school, I was terrified to apply, but I'm really glad that I did. Yeah, and the rest is history. Rest is history.
Okay. So the next thing, now I know like kind of the application process changes from year to year depending upon like the details of the essays or the LORs. But in general, what was your entire experience like preparing the application? Because I think there's a 2 month period where you have to get all of your submissions in. So what was that experience for you like?
The experience for me was really introspective, which I hope that it would be for anybody who applies to not only the Brooke Owens Fellowship, but to any fellowship. Um, Really, what it was asking, mine asked for only one essay and then one multimedia essay with an optional third. I ended up doing all three, and the two of my multimedia essays were, it was a video where I recorded in like a little like audio studio with a friend. We just sat and chatted for like 2 hours, and then made that into a 5-minute video kind of about who I was and why I kind of fit into the group of people that they would want to be a Brooke Owens Fellow. And then the other one was a short story about my favorite climbing tree, but it wasn't about my favorite climbing tree. It was about me from the perspective of my favorite climbing tree. And so it was really, really fun to get creative and to get vulnerable with not only myself, but with the application committee in the Brooke Owens Fellowship, and to really show them that like I had the potential to be these great things. I just needed the kickstart. And so the application process for me took, it consisted of a lot of procrastination. I'm not going to lie. I think a lot of people in my class actually procrastinated till pretty much the last minute, but I haven't really ever been so deeply in tune with who I was, other than at that experience, because I strongly felt that I would not have another opportunity to break out into the kind of world that I wanted to be in. And so it was really a make or break situation for me for sure. And I put my everything into it.
I think that's one of the unique parts of this fellowship is where they actually want to know like who you are as a person as opposed to kind of your achievements or the things that you're doing. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
really what makes this program stand out. Okay, so the next one, we know that through the Brooke Owens Fellowship, you worked as a systems engineering intern at the Aerospace Corporation. So, what was your experience like over there? And particularly, like, as opposed to if you would have traditionally been an intern there rather than a brookie, like, what was the difference in the experience?
The only difference in the experience really was that I was able to take that week to go to the summit out in Washington, D.C. And then there was a luncheon that Steve Isakowitz, the CEO of Aerospace Corporation, had with all of the fellows there. I was the only Brooke Owens Fellow for that year,
Okay.
but there were also Matthew Isakowitz Fellows, there were GEM Fellows, and a couple other kinds of fellows at the Aerospace Corporation. And Steve Isakowitz is a fantastic CEO when it comes to making sure that he is connected to everyone in the company all the way down. He would have luncheons with interns all the time. It was really, really incredible. So it wasn't super like special, but I did get to have, it was special. It was very special for me to be able to have lunch with him, and not only him, but all of the other fellows that were at the company. Um, but other than that, it was a pretty, I would say, a typical internship experience, except for the fact that I knew that Aerospace Corporation loved all of their brookies that they had had before, and that's obviously kind of why they kept participating. But it put a lot of pressure on me being, I had just finished my sophomore year in engineering. I had taken maybe two computer science classes in C++. I had to teach myself Python that summer. I had to teach myself orbital mechanics that summer from a textbook. And it was my very first internship as well. So I didn't know anything and I didn't have any experience. But because the Brooke Owens Fellowship backed me up, I made it to that spot. And so, yeah, it was a little bit intimidating to say the least. And I just had kind of like the weight of the Brooke Owens Fellowship, I felt like, on my shoulders because I had to uphold the type of fellow that they had had prior. But it really held me to a new standard of work and just like a new standard of hard work. And it was really a good external motivator to keep going and try really, really hard to get all of my work done and do the best work that I could on those projects. I guess I also had the Brooke Owens. There were a couple of Brooke Owens who were working there as well, and so I had a really strong connection with them because they were like, "Hey, look, the new Brookie," and so it was very fun.
That's amazing. Like just having that fellowship to back you up and kind of give you that self-confidence that you need. And especially when you mentioned like you had to learn things on your own, like after you finish your sophomore year to kind of work there, it being your first experience. I think that's great what the fellowship's providing. Okay, now since you mentioned that you had a network of previous brookies at the Aerospace Corporation, that leads us to kind of our next question. How did the things that the fellowship provides, like the internship, the mentorship in particularly, we haven't talked about that, and the network with the fellow brookies, both the previous years and your own class, how did that affect like your career trajectory after the summer was over? Like, because I know that you interned at ULA after that, and you're also the project lead for your Mars rover team, so kind of that entire experience. And also the reason why I asked this question is particularly like on the Brooke Owens website, they have a very nice paragraph. I'll just quote this from their website, where they say, across the board, our fellows have reported feeling both more driven and better prepared for successful careers in aerospace as a result of their experience in our program. So could you maybe back this up by sharing your personal experience of the whole thing?
Yeah. So in May, no, not May, yes, May of 2019. So this is, a couple months after I had been, named a Brooke Owens Fellow for 2019. I was lucky enough to come across in a SEDS group chat somewhere that's Students for the Exploration and Development of Space. They're kind of tight. There's a lot of SEDS members in Brooke Owens, and there's a lot of Brooke Owens and SEDS. I came across this free ticket to a conference, the Satellite Conference 2019, that was in Washington, D.C. And they said, the cost of the ticket's usually $3,000, and you can go for free, but you have to, pay your way there. And so I crowdfunded money to get out to DC, and I went to that conference, and it was crazy. I had not ever been in any kind of part of the aerospace industry before, other than I knew that Orbital ATK had like absorbed Northrop Grumman because we have the Promontory test facility just out, an hour away from my university. But everyone that I met, because I had a couple of connections there I didn't had in the aerospace industry. And that's actually how I got my job at ULA. Was I went to, at that same conference, a little reception after the conference, and it was hosted by ULA. And I went with a couple of my new friends that I had met at the conference, and Tori Bruno was there. And so I went up and introduced myself because he is a Brooke Owens mentor. And so I went up and introduced myself, and I said, "Hey, I'm Grace Graham. I'm a 2019 Brookie. Super excited to like meet you because you're another one of the mentors. And I just wanted to make that connection." He was like, "Oh yeah, I love Brooke Owens Fellows. Do you want a job?" Like just like that. I was like, whoa. Like it was my dream, my absolute dream to work for United Launch Alliance. My very first rocket launch that I had seen was in 2018 when they launched the Parker Solar Probe, and I was flown out by somebody to go watch that. And that was crazy seeing the Delta IV Heavy launch this thing, and it just, rocket launches just feel so good. But I was just shell shocked that I like just like that was the kind of power that the network, this Brooke Owens connection network thing gave me. And so I said that I had a job that summer, but I would love to have one the next summer. And so he gave me his business card. He said, send me your resume. And I did. And then come September, I messaged him on LinkedIn because we had connected on LinkedIn. And I said, hey, like, remember meeting me? I would love a job. And he said, oh, yeah, for sure. Like, go apply for whatever one you want. And I did. And then I went to ULA and it was amazing. And there's a part of me, I just am so grateful for the network that the Brooke Owens Fellowship has given me. And then not only that, but the job that I have this summer, which is working as a business development intern for ABL Space Systems, also came about because of somebody that I met at that same conference, John Conifay, who is a fantastic, fantastic human being. But it just like the network that started with the Brooke Owens Fellowship gave me so much, like it just gave me all the tools that I needed to succeed, which was more than I could have ever asked for.
That's amazing. Like just that one start, like exactly as you mentioned, that was the Kickstarter that you needed for all of the things that followed.
And it's crazy because it like I kept saying, you know, this is the rocket launch that I need. This is like, you know, this is the catalyst that I need, but it has been so much more explosive than I ever could have imagined, which was just, it's always mind blowing to me.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that story.
Of course.
Okay, so finally, I think this is what a lot of the aspiring brookies are waiting for. Just from your heart, any advice that you want to give to someone who's probably going to apply this year or in the future and want to become a Brooke Owens Fellow?
Yeah, it's become such a hard, like a really difficult process to get into the fellowship. But honestly, the best advice that I can give is to just thoroughly be yourself. Get excited about things. Don't just, you know, I know that one of the essay questions every year is, would you rather design, build, fly, or test, you know, a new airplane or something? But don't just tell me like which one of those you want to do and why. Really build a story around it. You know, come at it like, I always come at it as like, I want to make sure that whoever is reading this, like it catches their attention. So I don't want to just say, I want to build because I really like building more than just flying. But I know that there were several essays that I would read over the years where it's like really a story was being told there. Like not just why you like building, but like the deeper level to why you like building, like what started that. When I did my application, I kind of read over all of the prompts several times before I started writing. And then without even picking a prompt, I started writing. Just because that was what was most natural to me and what it was the story that I needed to tell. And we're not super strict on like, oh, did this fit into the prompts like perfectly? It's more of the prompts are just questions to help us get to know you better. So if you have a story that you want to tell, pick a prompt that loosely fits it, but write that story first. As long as it, you know, like is within the bounds.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, just be so unapologetically yourself, you know, and really you are in this process, you are, other than your couple of recommendation letters, you are your best advocate. So you need to hype yourself up because you deserve it, right? Tell us why you deserve it. That's what we want to know. You can't be, you know, humble about the things that you've done or the, you know, person that you are. You need to really show that very, very strongly in this process. And that's what we're looking for, is who are you and why are you proud to be who you are, and why do you, you know, deserve a spot in this really now like super prestigious fellowship? Because you probably do deserve a spot, but you really got to sell to us why that is, because we don't know you and we only have, 3 essays and a couple of letters from people who know you to figure out why, so those are my recommendations for sure.
That's amazing advice. And I don't know if you've mentioned this, but Grace actually was kind of my mentor through the entire process as well.
Mhm.
And again, just talking to people really helps, especially people who've been through this process. Like the things that you shared even right now about having a story and being unapologetically yourself, like those are some of the things that really what the fellowship is looking for. And just having you giving your personal insights about not just like the application and the fellowship, but how it's affected your future paths and future opportunities. So
Mhm.
I think, yeah, I guess that brings us to the end of the interview. Thank you so much again for sharing these invaluable insight to the entire fellowship and even to your personal story. Again, thank you so much for being here.
You're so welcome. I love telling it. So anytime, always feel free to reach out to me. Whoever watches this video, I'm Grace Graham. Feel free to find me on social media and ask me questions. The
Yeah, I'll
application
link all of your
process,
social medias in the description as well if they're interested.
perfect.